You show up early, you stay late, you carry the team on your back, and somehow the person doing absolutely nothing still has a job. Not only do they still have a job, they're thriving. No write-ups, no warnings, no consequences at all. And you're sitting there wondering if the entire system is broken. My name is Dre, and today we're breaking down the 4 reasons why the laziest people at work are practically untouchable, while hard workers like you keep getting punished for being good at your job. Once you understand how this game actually works, you'll never look at your office the same way again. Let me take you back to a role I had a few years ago. I worked on a team with this guy. Let's call him Marcus. Marcus was perfectly likable. Good energy, always smiling, no personal issues with the guy whatsoever. But when it came to doing actual work, Marcus was a ghost. The rest of us were stretched thin, handling 2 or 3 roles each because management loved the idea of running lean. Everyone understood the situation and everyone pulled their weight. Everyone except Marcus. Marcus would drift in around 9:30, spend 20 minutes catching up on group chats, disappear for a long coffee run, and eventually settle into his desk where he'd spend a suspicious amount of time scrolling through sports highlights. His responsibilities were mostly independent, so most days we just shook our heads and moved on. But every now and then we had to collaborate, and that's where things got ugly. Marcus would dodge every assignment he could, claiming he was swamped. And on the rare occasion he actually committed to a deliverable, there was maybe a 1 in 10 chance he'd follow through. The rest of us would scramble to cover whatever he dropped. His unfinished work became our emergency, and somehow we ended up taking the heat when things went sideways. And here's the part that really got under my skin. Because high performers are wired to be good teammates, we didn't just tolerate it, we enabled it. We'd stay an extra hour to clean up what Marcus left undone. We'd quietly redo his sloppy contributions before anyone noticed. And if you're being honest with yourself, you probably do the same thing. You don't think twice about stepping in because that's just who you are. You might even be a bit of a people pleaser about it, but that's a topic for another video. The point is, if you've ever lived this, you already know how maddening it is. But here's what I've learned since then. It's not random. It's not bad luck. There is a very specific playbook that lazy people follow, whether they realize it or not. And it starts with reason number 1. Lazy people have an obsessive understanding of what actually matters. Not what should matter, what actually matters. If you're a high performer, you probably chase excellence across the board. You want every metric, every deliverable, every interaction to reflect your best work. You take pride in exceeding expectations because that's who you are. Lazy people don't operate that way. They operate on what I call the minimum performance threshold. They know exactly which boxes need to be checked to stay employed and which ones are purely decorative. If I had asked Marcus to list his core responsibilities, the ones that would actually trigger consequences if they weren't met, he could have rattled them off without hesitating. More importantly, he knew which responsibilities nobody was actually tracking. He knew which deadlines had real teeth and which ones were suggestions. He knew which managers cared about output and which ones only cared about optics. While you're burning energy trying to be excellent at everything, lazy people are doing the math on what they can skip entirely without anyone noticing. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of the time, they're right. Nobody notices. Because you're the one quietly filling in the gaps they leave behind. That invisible safety net you provide is exactly what keeps them employed. Which brings us to reason number 2. Lazy people are masters of strategic energy investment. They do the smallest amount of work possible for the biggest return on recognition. You've probably noticed this pattern. While your head's down at your desk, Grinding through actual deliverables, Marcus is wandering the halls having long conversations with people from other departments. He's grabbing lunch with a senior director. He's cracking jokes in the break room with someone from finance. And somehow, to the people who don't work directly with him, Marcus seems like a fantastic employee. That's not an accident. Research on career advancement shows that your actual job performance accounts for a surprisingly small portion of what determines your promotability. Your visibility and the perception people have of you carry far more weight. Lazy people understand this instinctively. They don't waste energy on work that nobody important will ever see. Instead, they invest that energy in being seen, being liked, and being perceived as valuable even when they're contributing almost nothing. And remember that one time out of 10, when Marcus actually followed through on something? It was never random. It was always on a project that had leadership attention. When executives were watching, Marcus was suddenly engaged, focused, and vocal about his contributions. The moment the spotlight moved on, so did his effort. But it gets worse. Because lazy people don't just strategically show up when it matters, they also take credit when they don't deserve it. I've seen it happen dozens of times. Someone else does 90% of the work, pulls the late nights, solves the hard problems, and the lazy colleague swoops in at the end to attach their name to the success. They take advantage of the fact that high performers tend to be humble. You're not out there broadcasting your contributions, which creates a gap they are more than happy to fill. They position themselves as the hero of every story they had almost no part in writing. And as infuriating as stolen credit is, there's something that burns even hotter: getting blamed for their failures. That leads us directly to reason number 3. Lazy people have built themselves an accountability shield. They are positioned to receive credit for wins and deflect blame for losses. It starts with what I call the double standard of expectations. Here's how it works. Your boss knows exactly who on the team is reliable and who isn't. They know that if something critical needs to get done, you're the person to call. They also know that asking Marcus is a waste of time because he'll either dodge it or botch it, and then they'll have to come to you anyway. So they skip the middleman and come straight to you every single time. This creates a brutal cycle. Because you're reliable, you get more work. Because you handle more work, they expect even more from you. Meanwhile, Marcus has almost nothing on his plate, so the bar he needs to clear is practically on the ground. You're being graded on a completely different scale than the person sitting 10 feet away from you. But it doesn't stop there. Lazy people also use what I think of as passive delegation. It's not the formal kind where a manager assigns you a task. It's the kind where a lazy colleague simply doesn't do their part and you're left holding the bag. When Marcus didn't deliver his piece of a group project, the rest of us had two choices: do his work for him or let the whole project fail and deal with the fallout. And since our names were on it too, we always picked option 1. Marcus knew that. He was counting on it. He understood that creating enough pressure would force someone else to step in, and once they did, he was free and clear. If the project succeeded, he'd share the credit. If it failed, he wasn't the one who did the work, so the blame landed on whoever actually tried. Some people would call that delegation, and honestly, that's exactly how leadership often perceives it. When a lazy person passes work to others, management doesn't see avoidance. They see someone who knows how to leverage their team, which ironically is a skill they look for in future leaders. The very behavior that makes your life miserable is the same behavior that gets them promoted. And that brings us to the fourth and final reason, and it ties everything together. Lazy people are not a problem for the people who have the power to fire them. Think about it from your manager's perspective. Marcus isn't missing major deadlines because he barely has any. He's not creating conflict because he avoids doing anything that could generate it. He's not threatening anyone's position because he's not ambitious enough to be a threat. He's not making mistakes because he's not doing enough work to make them. Sure, there are complaints about the workload being uneven. Sure, people grumble about fairness, but the work is still getting done. It's getting done because you and the rest of the high performers are absorbing everything Marcus drops. From your manager's chair, there is no fire to put out. The team is delivering. The metrics look fine. And Marcus is pleasant, visible, and drama-free. Why would they disrupt that? Firing Marcus creates a vacancy they need to fill, a hiring process they need to run, and a transition period that could actually cause the disruption they've been avoiding. Keeping Marcus is the path of least resistance, and most managers will take it every single time. And here's the part nobody talks about. Many of the people in leadership got to where they are by doing a version of the same thing. They networked. They delegated. They managed perceptions. So when they look at Marcus, they don't see a problem employee. They see someone who reminds them of their own climb. That's not a comfortable truth, but it explains why the system protects these people instead of holding them accountable. So here's where this leaves you. Lazy people at work are not your boss's problem. They're your problem. You're the one absorbing their workload, covering their mistakes, and burning out trying to maintain standards they never had. None of that is your fault. The system is designed to exploit your reliability and your willingness to do whatever it takes to get the job done. But understanding the game is the first step to refusing to play it on their terms. You can start setting boundaries and stop automatically volunteering for work that isn't yours. You can get strategic about your own visibility instead of just grinding in silence while someone else takes the spotlight. And most importantly, you can stop being the invisible safety net that makes their laziness sustainable. The playing field was never level, but now you can see exactly where the slope is. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. If this helped you see your workplace differently, hit that subscribe button, and I'll keep breaking down the dynamics that nobody else is willing to talk about.